Well, good morning, everybody. I hope everybody is doing well today. If you're joining us from faraway, distant places, again, thanks for joining me. I appreciate you being with us here this morning. Today, we're going to take a look at the next book in the Bible in this series titled What's the Point that we've been looking at. And this series is designed for us to really glean the major issue or the major point of what each book of the Bible is all about. In other words, why was it written? What was the author's main, idea or concept or theological whatever that they were trying to get across to people by writing the book? Well, today we're going to take a look at the book of Romans. And I want to share with you a couple of thoughts. The book of Romans was one that was originally written by a man by the name of Saul. Saul was a Pharisee. He was a Jew. He was very devout when it came to his religion and his following of God. But Saul was not believing in the new, this aspect of faith that Jesus was promoting and that Jesus was teaching. Saul eventually was converted, and he came to realize that Jesus is the Messiah, and that Jesus' teachings were true, and that he was truly sent by God, and that Jesus actually lived and died and was crucified on a cross for no valid reason. He did it to save mankind as a sacrifice, holy and perfect, and that through who Jesus was and who Jesus is and what Jesus did, that we today might have redemption, which is totally a gift of grace by God. And we'll get into some of that a little bit later. But Saul was a Pharisee, and he was trying to stamp out this new, they called it the way of Christ, and he was trying everything he could to stamp it out. Well, Paul, after his conversion, became known as the Apostle Paul. Now, he writes this book. We're back to writing the book now. And Paul writes this book to the Roman church. And let me explain to you what was going on. You see, the Roman church, originally when Jesus was there and the converts came about, these were Jewish people who came to believe that Jesus was the Messiah, and they believed that the Messiah had come, and now their faith was changing to believe in Jesus as God's Son, and to believe that Jesus was the Messiah sent by God to suffer and die and be resurrected for the forgiveness of sins. But it was mostly Jews. But then the Romans actually exiled the Jewish people from Rome after that. And what happened was the church that had been established was now left with just non-Jewish people. And they were not, totally ingrained in all of the different rituals and traditions of the Jewish culture. So they started to honor God and worship God in different ways. And then later, the Romans are allowed to come back, or I'm sorry, the Jews were allowed to come back to Rome. So the Jews come back, and the church that they had started was now different. It's full of all these, non-Jewish people. They're doing things in non-Jewish ways, and there was all kinds of fighting and bickering inside. So Paul decides to write him a letter. And, the reason for the letter there was a couple of reasons. One of the reasons was Paul wanted to display for them, to make them understand that there's this thing called sanctification. And sanctification simply means that you don't just believe and all of a sudden, you accept, God's salvation and that's it. You're done. You've arrived. But instead, that the whole process of becoming a believer, and then tomorrow becoming a deeper believer, and then the next day becoming an even deeper believer, it was a process that continued on all throughout your lifetime. That's what it meant to be sanctified by God, was that you allowed your heart to continually be changed by the Spirit of God and through the teachings of Christ, as well as his representatives that were left, the disciples in the early church. So Paul makes that declaration in this book of Romans. But like I said, the church was very much divided at this point. And, Paul writes this book, or this letter to them again, wanting to explain a couple of things to them. One of them was he wrote a letter to the church to kind of promote this aspect that all of us have fallen. All of us have fallen short of the glory of God. Let me put this up on the screen for you. This is the major verse out of the book of Romans that I think all of us need to look at and remember. For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. Paul starts off with this. This is out of Romans chapter 3, and starts with verse 23. And he declares, hey, everybody is sinful before God. Nobody, can, measure up to God and God's glory and God's character and all that. And then he says, and all are justified by his grace as a gift. You see, so many times we as Christians think that we can earn our way back to God, or we can earn God's forgiveness. That's not the case at all. You can't do anything to add to the sacrifice that Jesus had to pay in order to be able to offer us redemption, offer us a way back to God. For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, and are justified by his grace as a gift, through the redemption that is in Christ Jesus, who God put forward as a propitiation by his blood to be received by faith. This was to show God's righteousness, because in his divine forbearance he had passed over former sins. You see, that's kind of what God was saying here. He was saying that I had to send Jesus, I had to send my Son, a holy and perfect God, into the world to die and to pay the price for sin, because you can't do it yourself. I mean, think about this. Let's say I was baking the perfect cake, and I wanted the perfect white icing to it. So I make sure everything is pure and all that, and I'm whipping up this icing, and it looks so perfect and great and tastes just wonderful. And then I say, well, I'm going to add something to it, and I take an eyedropper and I put a drop of diesel fuel in it. Well, guess what? It's going to permeate all of the icing. It's going to cause it to taste like, diesel fuel. It ruins it. It's the same thing with our sacrifice as human beings. If we try and add to the perfect sacrifice of Jesus, all we do is ruin it. So we can't earn our way back to God. We can't do enough good things in order to get back to God and be redeemed. It comes as a free gift. God sacrificing himself and then saying, if you want this gift of redemption through my sacrifice, through my Son, all you have to do is believe and have faith in me and have faith in that sacrifice. That's what he's saying here. The book of Romans is absolutely one of the clearest and most systematic presentations of the Christian doctrine in all of the scriptures. If you want to know what the faith is all about, you go to the book of Romans and you read verses like the ones I just showed to you. And the main point of the book of Romans was two things. Again, they were a church that was having all kinds of disagreements, and Jesus clears that right up and says, you know what, everybody has fallen short of God. Everybody has fallen short of being, acceptable before God, regardless of whether you're Jew or you're Gentile, or you're, whatever. It doesn't make any difference. So we're all in the same boat. There is no difference. And he tells the church that to begin with. And then he tells the church through this scripture, he says, guys, you don't get it. You can't fix your problem yourself. The only way to salvation, the only way to redemption, is through this relationship, through your faith in who God is, through Jesus. and his faithful sacrifice on the cross. That's the only way, is to believe in and have faith and trust in that sacrifice. You know, so many times we try and do things ourselves because we always feel more comfortable when it comes to having control of things, doing things on our own, doing things in a way that we can, understand and we can control, and it makes us feel good about it. But this is one of those instances where you can't. You can't fix the problem on your own. And many people feel like they can. That is the biggest difference between the Christian faith and all of the other world religions out there. Is all of the other religions teach that it is your efforts in combination with a God's efforts that equal out redemption or salvation. But the Christian faith teaches us that we can't do anything. We are like the diesel fuel being added to the white icing, the vanilla frosting. All we will do is ruin that perfect sacrifice. But God, through his grace, because of his character, says, if you simply will have faith in me, and you simply will believe and have faith in Jesus, my only begotten Son, and what he's done on your behalf, then you will be washed clean by that sacrifice and accepted once again into the family of God. Friends, that's the bottom line of the book of Romans, is quit bickering, understand that we're all in the same boat, and trust in the sacrifice of Christ. Friends, thanks, and God bless, and I hope you have a great day. Hey, bring somebody with you next week. And if you want to check out the other aspects or the other messages in this series called What's the Point, go to the Tough Questions for God or YouTube channel, and you'll find them all listed there, as well as many others. Thanks, and God bless. Tough Questions for God is a teaching ministry of the Rosebush United Methodist Church, where we challenge our faith with some of the most difficult issues. Tough Questions for God is available on Facebook Live, Sundays at 11:30 a.m., or go on our website at toughquestionsforgod.org and just follow the links on the homepage for YouTube or via podcast. Thanks for joining, and don't forget to like and share. God bless.